Good morning, everybody. Hopefully everybody's enjoying this time. It's a privilege for me to be here. It's our first conference at Confidence, and I'm actually enjoying it a lot. So let's kind of jump in. This session is going to be very unique. I have a plan for a live demo. We'll see if I pull a Bill Gates, plug in the USB and it fails, but hopefully everything will work out. So a little bit of the agenda. All right, number one threat right now that we see is not your typical hackers that most of us have seen. And if you've ever seen the movie from 80s, Hackers, right? They don't do that anymore. It's easier to steal, social engineering, phishing. It's much easier. So we're going to talk a little bit about human and machines and why that is the next evolving threat. And I pulled some statistics. I actually don't like it. I'm an engineer, but I think it sets the boundary and kind of becomes the ground level for how we want to begin. Privileged access is dynamic. It changes all the time. We see this from banking industry to government industry, right? 10 years ago, you can download a banking app, and it didn't require MFA. Nobody cared. Now the evolution has changed, and now everybody says you have to have MFA. There's no way you can have a banking app without a second factor. The shift to identity-centric, something going beyond the PAM. PAMs over years have become static. Password rotations, right? We put a vault, put everything inside the vault, and everything's going to be fine. But that has changed. Identity-centric is the new way. I'm going to talk about that, how we change this. And authorization as the primary focus. What we see a lot of times is people still focus on authentication. Now, a little bit about my history, and let's get So I'm a solution engineer at Delinea. Getting older, gray beard, so I moved to sales organization. I like it, a little bit different. Before that, I was about a little bit over 3 years at Cisco. I worked on firepower. I was a technical marketing engineer there. And then before that, over 18 years with most of security VAR vendors, kind of living abroad. I love automation and security, and probably because I'm getting older, I'm getting lazy, so I want to automate as much things as possible to do everything for me. So, as I mentioned, statistics. Not a big fan of this, but if you start thinking about this, a lot of people always tell me this is not true, or maybe we're more than that. But nobody kind of agrees on 90%. Now, this was done by a study that 90% will adopt a hybrid cloud. Now, I did this talk, so I have a huge region in my company, and I was in Latvia, and I asked a very simple question. How many people still run Exchange on-prem? And that room, it was a small crowd. It was a workshop for customers, so 20 people basically. But 6 out of 20 raised their hand, and I said, okay, that number's way low, because they still don't have anything. Majority of us have moved to Exchange, Google, or some sort of a cloud for email. And that automatically marks us as a hybrid. But why am I talking about this? 75% of threats detected are identity-based. As I mentioned earlier, we don't do low-level hacking. Yes, they still exist, but that number, like when I was in 1990s, that was the common sense, right? You got a dial-up connection, and then you try to get into some mainframe. It was completely different. Now, go to ChatGPT, create a phishing email. In 5 minutes, you have a phishing email you can send to your family. I actually did that. They all failed. I told them we're going to do a family picnic, organize some T-shirts. Please tell me your T-shirt size. Send them to a Google Workspace Docs. They all put in their passwords. It was a fake site. Literally, under 5 minutes, ChatGPT gave me that thing. So identity is the number one source, or 75% of it, but we see the rise over years. 68% evolve human. I know that sometimes is difficult, but we're still the weakest link. Every corporation we go to, they still do training for phishing. Email's been around for years, and we still don't know how to use it. Interesting, right? But we still do as much training as possible. Recent conference in Belgrade, they asked a very important question. How soon is too soon to start teaching your kids what a phishing email is? Second grade, third grade? Most kids nowadays have iPhones in second and third grade. I have a daughter in second grade, and she just got her first iPhone. No SIM card, it won't do anything, but Wi-Fi at home, fine. Why? So when is it too early? It's because we are the weakest link. We need to start teaching. But not just the kids, we need to also, as adults, evolve throughout time. 85% are hacked machines' identities. This one is interesting because we never think about it. But we actually, I found a study because of this. I love this picture, but let me show you this. 20 times, this study was done, and I can't remember the source, so let me look at this right now. Cloud Security Alliance. 20 times more identities, machine or non-human identities, as they like to abbreviate it, compared to human identities. That's becoming the number one factor from every single thing that we see across every spectrum. Humans are still the weakest link. There's still the access. We don't update our browsers. We don't care about patching, right? We use personal desktops for a lot of things. And we use passwords. But machines, 20 times. How do we protect it? So 50% feel, and this study is done by ESG, 50% of corporations feel they're ready to prevent next or non-human identity. Now, I thought that acronym is funny because the first time I saw it, I thought it was National Hospital Institute. But this is the reality. We don't think about how humans and non-human identities coexist. How many do we use? APIs, right? Service accounts. Every single robotic, refrigerators, all of that is non-human. So AI. Now, you don't have to raise a question, but just think about it. Have you been to a workshop, conference, or something this year, or even late last year, where the topic wasn't AI? It's a nice buzzword. But AI is evolving. 35% CISOs are already saying they're using AI. How? Majority of it, analytics. We put the data in some box, it analyzes it 3 times faster, and we don't have to hire 5 employees to do it. And it puts out the report in an hour or 2 hours compared to 1 week or 2 months. A lot of companies are also adopting. So Delenia is relatively pretty big global company. And when we talk to our customers, they're already saying they're already planning on adopting it this year. But the question is, how? Where do we put it? Sorry. So, as I kind of mentioned, I worked my entire, I would say, career in network security. Firewalls, probably the reason I'm bald right now. And if you think about it, we all know from network something called network fabric. It's interesting. But identity fabric is something new. We all know AAA. Everybody from college is the first thing you learn. Right? Authentication, authorization, accounting. In identity, the approach is replace the accounting by governance. Identity-centric, making sure we connect every single dot. From when a person is onboarded to a company or their digital identity is formed, all the way till we release them. But the key concept here, why I took this out, is this quote. Effective identity for security is built on authorization. Authentication has been around for years. You cannot go out and buy a firewall, a router, or server, or workstation, and don't expect to put in admin password or some sort of a root account. You can't. Authentication has been there on every box. Authorization is something that we see the neglect. Why the neglect? So Delenia is starting to form this kind of saying, you have your authentication, keep it. You have your Okta, Microsoft, Google Workspace, it's no problem. It's there, it's been there for years, and it functions. How has it evolved over the years? We changed passwords from 4 characters to 8 to 10 to 12. Now that the new standard all of a sudden is 18 or 20. That's the evolution of authentication. So how do we see this? We want to focus on authorization, especially AI-driven authorization, something that we can control once you get into the box, or once you authenticate somewhere. Once you put in that admin, we want to control how much damage or how much privileges you have once you get into that. And it needs to work everywhere. We don't have just on-prem. As you saw from the statistics, it's no longer just an on-prem world, or it's not just a full cloud world. Applications, everything. So Delinea made a few acquisitions last year, and I kind of kept the historical names there. We bought Automize, a startup from a kind of small startup, but very, very powerful, to give us context. It does discovery, and that's going to be one of the demos I'm going to try to do here in a minute. Because, let's just say this. When I got my first, and you know, if you know firewalls, you'll get this probably as a funny joke. We got our first, my boss ordered the first next generation firewall for us to test. Now, I used to do a lot of ASAs and layer 4, basically simple stuff. And we block port SSH, HTTP, stuff like that. And he says, hey, what is this? And we did some workshops. We said, it's like, gives us more visibility. What do you mean? And we'll plug it in and we'll see. We're going to put on our employee VLAN only. That has no servers, nothing. I used to work at a partner, so no problem. We'll see how the employees are doing. And if you ever did this, and if you're this old, and you remember that time, the first time you plugged it in, what's the first thing you saw? How many people watch YouTube and Netflix at work? All the applications all of a sudden started populating because we cared about visibility. This is the same concept. We bought Automize to provide visibility into identities. So we can collect as much identity from where it's coming in, multi-cloud, on-prem, and everything. And then we bought an IGA company, FastPath. So it can give us the classifications. So we can drive that authorization. We can say, you are this person, Johnny from accounting, and you only have access to these servers on this layer once you authenticate. Not, here's your username, password, go do whatever you need to do. But these are the commands you can execute, these are the applications. And I'll have a demo on this later on. So unique thing about Delinea, and this is my marketing kind of telling me I have to do this, but we provide solutions based on software. We don't have appliances, we don't have black boxes, it's software. You purchase the software, it's all modular, and you build whatever you want. Do you want MFA? Do you want HA? Do you want identity protection, ITDR? And it needs to work across the 4 spectrums of identity. IT, majority of us engineering teams are in IT. Workforce, HR, salespeople, accounting people. Non-human, and then my favorite group, which is the crazy people, developers. Because it's the hardest group to control from identity. They just need access to everything all the time. Otherwise, they say, we don't code. So we have to protect those 4 spectrums, so your solution needs to fit on every single layer. Sorry. So, like I mentioned, I'm going to do 2 demos. Hopefully you like them. This is one of our, I would say, modulars. It's one of my favorites because visibility. So going back to that next generation firewalls, why was that revolutionary? This is discovery on a different layer from identity. And this is what the picture looks like in reality. We have applications in Dropbox, in Office, on-prem, basically everywhere. We have username and password to every. Yes, we do use single sign-ons. But you know, single sign-ons is based on application. It's a single sign-on to another application. It still has a policy attached there. So we need to control that somehow. So how do we do that? I'm going to put screenshots before I do demo, just to kind of walk it through before I start clicking and going crazy. We discover everything, and then we give you a nice report. Now, my favorite is the compliance is in the top right-hand corner. If you care about ISO 27001, CIS V8, it shows you how good your identity security approach is based on those compliances. And then we give you this report. I highlighted one, which is anybody in AWS, you'll probably see that, shadow admins. But if you notice, it goes across AWS, Entra, Azure. It's multi-absorbent. You connect the applications, we read that, and we tell you how your security posture is. So what happens once we find it? Well, first we get a nice description. So if you don't know what shadow admin is, right? It's a non-admin that somebody misconfigured something and gave him just enough admin privileges that if he's smart or uses smartly ChatGTP, you can elevate yourself to be an admin. It's a very risky approach. A lot of people don't know they're shadow admins, but that's how it's built. Policies are imperfect. Otherwise, we wouldn't have all the threats in cybersecurity. So what happens next? Well, we show you the users that are affected by this. So we show you people that are the potential threat. And remediation. You can vault them, and you can protect their passwords, create password rotations. That traditional PAM component gets plugged in there. So let's kind of take a look at, from a life point of view, and what I'm going to do here, so this is our, I would say, platform. I'm going to just log in. I'm just going to walk you through a few of those policies and different things. So we're just going to take a look at it. So Delaney, one thing about this product is we made it very simple. People need to adapt using software. How many times do we find softwares as engineers? I remember greatest firewalls, but nobody knew how to use it, or you needed a special certifications to be able to program it. So adapt to the software. Make sure the users use it. So here we're going to do is, I'm going to show you the sum of the sources. I have quite a few already loaded here, but it's very simple. First thing you do is you connect your applications. So these are some of the applications that we can connect. Very simply, once we connect the application from, I don't know, Okta, Amazon, anything, it gives us a category. We can either for vaulting, so service accounts, human accounts, those are the types we want to vault, or we can go into identity threat protection. ITDR. It's a concept in cloud, but also on-prem. We need to be able to discover the on-prem components. And then what do we do after that? Postures, or as I like to call them, checks. This is the dashboard we show. And the beauty of this dashboard, let me dismiss that bar, is if I go here, you can see which ones I'm passing. Now, this wasn't on the screenshot, but for example, enable MFA for all admins. Now, if you're only in Azure, you can get that report. But if you're running multi-clouds, or you're running in different systems, or different SaaS applications, it's hard to manage. You need a single pane of glass to be able to show that report. So then we've seen limit number of administrators, one of my favorite ones. This is one of the #1 problems for Microsoft AD users on-prem. Why? Well, if the organization that you work for is trying to get ISO 27001, that's a huge violation. According to ISO 27001 compliance, depending on the size of your company, you should only have so many admins. What does most organizations do nowadays? They give you one standard email account when you're an administrator, and then one account that's ADM. And we spread this across everywhere. That's the norm. But then you can't pass ISO 27001 when you have too many admins. Or as NIST 2 recently is going to release, hopefully in Poland and all the other countries, their local, I would say, ordinance, they're also saying you need to have admins who are limited. They can't just be admin for everything, or those ADM traditional accounts. So the way we work is going to change. Here, it's going to show me all the administrators and how many I have. Now, the beauty of it is, I can go back and change this. If my organization hires 10 people, I may be within my new limit, I can adapt that. It's a self-check. So in this scenario, we can basically go through. Now, administrators are going to go very easily and say, I just want to see the failed ones so I can start passing everything. So, second one, traditional PAM. What happens in traditional PAM? Traditional PAM works very simple. There's a nice GUI or some system. I have to log in there. I get the password, and I log into the system. What do 90% of administrators do? Find a workaround. How can I go through a jump hose or somewhere else and be able to bypass the entire system? Because I need that superhuman account or Superman account, whichever way you want to call it. So bypass. This actually detects on Okta our user who is somehow configured through our IAM that has access to some system that will allow him to bypass the entire vault. And that's a huge threat, because why do companies buy PAM? Protect their identities. So this is one feature that a lot of customers always call me when they say, yes, this is definitely, we want to see this. And if you're a CISO, of course, every dashboard now has analytics, right? It's going to show you accounts that are risky, accounts that are overprivileged, accounts that have too much administrative permissions. So then you can start seeing, we collect that data and we can analyze behavior of those administrators. Now, if there are some specific things also, we do have a stand there. Delinea is one of the sponsors here, so we always welcome if you want to talk about this further. But I'm going to go on to the next one. So let me make this bigger again, because I want to save more time for this. This is something that a lot of people have asked for more. Give me 1 second. The authorization piece. How does that actually work? This is one of my favorite. As an engineer, this is probably like candy for a kid. So I'm going to talk to you on a very, I would say, high level, but to just make sure we understand. And then I'm going to show you in the demo what that looks like from a full point of view. So before PAM, administrators have SSH, RDP, other protocols. We log into the system. Simple. Next step, hackers log into your non-protected browser, personal computer, get the passwords, or from dark web, anywhere. We've saw, if you've been to some of the sessions, you see how easy it is to export hidden passwords, cached, everything else. Identity, social engineering, all the concepts. And then they get into the system. Organizations then go and say, we want a vault. We want that traditional PAM. So we put a PAM, great defense. But in this vault concept, what ends up happening? Lateral movement. Attacker goes to a different system, and is able to get into that PAM bypass. So how do we protect this? With proper authorization comes real great responsibility on how we can protect this. If we put in that we can start saying, let's put MFA on every server, Windows, Unix, Linux, AIX, Solaris, whatever you have. And very soon we're going to have an agent also for mainframes. I talked to a few people and we're talking about it, that mainframes are going down. I spoke to IBM and they sold records of mainframes in the last 2 years. They're not going away. And what ends up happening is, why is this important? So we put MFA on everything. That's the first component. Second is, you start protecting that lateral movement, because it protects the targeted systems. Oops, wrong way. But we also need to restrict it. They shouldn't have access all the time, and they should be granular. You can run this sudo command, but you can't run anything else. You can run this as administrator, you can run this as administrator, but you can't run anything else. Granular control of authorizations. And time-based. You can work from 9 to 5, but if you want to have access to a system after hours, it needs to be controlled through just-in-time concept. I need access, I go through a workflow, and my manager or somebody approves it. Now, this demo is one of my favorites for one main reason. Because when we apply MFA, we want to make sure we can apply it everywhere. Delinea is the only vendor that can provide MFA on all the different systems at different layers. When you think about MFA, how do most banks do it? You have a platform, right? You go to any bank and you log in there and you provide your two-factor. Okay, that's first. Second is at the vault level. There's another MFA you can enable or not. But the most crucial for engineering is at the server level or even at privilege elevation, something very unique to Delinea. So imagine running sudo, if there's any Unix guys here or Linux, which I'm probably assuming few, you run sudo rm-rf. And all of a sudden at that command it tells you you need the UB key that's configured for that security policy. And the only person who has that is your boss. You know you are not wiping that system. Or you run to unmount disks or destroy the database you do run as administrator, and at that point it prompts you for user and password, but it says you also need an MFA at this point. Now that's taking it to the next level. That's protecting not just the servers, but actual authorization, what happens on that. And the funny part is networks have been doing this for years. Servers, we're just getting started. So this is one of the big differentiators for Delinea, because we can integrate. So if you have Oktas, Yubico, Fidos, Duals, Microsoft, we can integrate with every single one. We ourselves have an OTP, like everybody else. Nothing special. OTP is hard-coded, keys rotating, that's it. We know customers nowadays have something. So this is something customers always ask me. Can we integrate what we have already, what we've invested and purchased? Yes. So I'm looking at this time here. We got plenty of time, so let's do a few demos. Now what's unique about this one is I'm going to do a demo on Windows, on Linux, with use cases. So also, please don't shoot the messenger. I have very small VMs. 2 gigs, you'll see them here, very tiny. But I built these just for this demo. So what we're going to do first is I'm going to log in as a user here. No MFA, I already pre-authenticated to make sure everything works before this session. And what this user does is he has access to a secret server, which is our vault. And you see I have some AD, Ubuntu machines, maybe a firewall or something. Nothing too special. But he's a standard user. Now we're going to leave him logged in because I want to show you what happens and why this is important. Here I'm going to log in as an admin. I'm going to kind of skip between browsers, so I apologize for the flickering. So, number one use case. Majority of engineerings are now contractors, or companies use contractors. This use case is based on that. How does this work? We have 1,000 servers, Unix, Windows, Solaris, everything. And let's say 200 of them broke. Now I don't have 200 servers, you saw I have 6. So, imagination. But what's going to happen interesting here is, contractor says, it's broken. CISO, somebody's calling, and we need access to this. You have to configure VPN, SSL, or IPsec. You have to configure agents. You have to configure access, and it takes time. What Delinea did very interesting is, when we go to policies, I can create a policy and say, I want to do endpoint logging. Now you can see I have a few different. I have granular privileges. I can assign certain administrative, like sudo commands or run as admin commands. But we're going to keep it high level at just logging, basic login to servers. Select a template. We're going to do just demo, policy name, subjects. I wish our marketing team thought of a different name than my subjects, but it's people. So here we're going to pick either groups or users. Oh, it's a contractor, so we're going to put that Tom Jones. He already has an account, an Active Directory, because we've used them before. And we have the user. Here we pick the systems. Now I have 6, but you can see you can pick Windows, Linux. So I can say I want this, these these two Linux systems. Actually, I don't like Ubuntu, so let's do Rocky, and the server. You can filter this out, you can change some of this, but now you're thinking, okay, Tomek, we have 200 servers, that clicking is gonna take time, okay? We've built something called collections. Here you can build server access based on VLANs, what they do, or their database, web servers, and you can basically create these, or contractor access, whatever collection you want to. So I'm just gonna go back and pick those servers that we did, add them to the policy, build a condition. This contractor needs access starting today till the end of the month. He's also gonna work only on Wednesdays and Fridays, and he needs access from certain time. Let's say 8 a.m. He likes to go, and let's do 6 p.m. We want to record that session, and we need to apply MFA. So what we're going to do is apply MFA logging. So I have logging MFA. That policy allows the self-service. So as soon as the user gets that access, he logs in and he configures his own MFA. Whatever we assigned him, so if it's dual, if it's YubiKey, or whatever it is, he's going to configure that himself. We create that policy, and it gets deployed in under 5 minutes to 200 servers or 6 servers or whatever we want. Now, what does that actually do? I'm going to switch back to that user, and here under inventory, I had a previous policy, so I have all the 6 servers. I'm a mini admin, contractor mini admin, and I have access to this. So how do we now log in? How do we use this? So let's say he wants to log into Windows. I can, if I have a secret or a password, an admin password assigned, I can use that to log in. It gives me an option. So if I click that, I see I can log in as administrator, because that's what they allow me to do to this server. If not, and I want to use, I can log in with my credentials. So we're going to log in with my credentials first. Oh. Yeah. Live demo, Bill Gates. So what it's doing now, it's going to process, opens up a browser, and it's going to RDP into that system. It uses reverse proxy. We use a proxy technology with, I like to call it, some steroids behind it. But it basically injects MFA. It takes MFA, the policy that we created, and it basically starts, and it asks me. Now, as that user I created, usually I would do OTP, but I don't like to pull my phone and start going through the million OTP codes or UBCO. I'm just going to do security question. Those are the easiest. So if I put that in right, I can log in and apply MFA at that login. I created that policy, and now I can log in as least privilege, as that user. If I applied granular policy, that user would be able to now run Microsoft SQL Studios as administrator, or services as administrator. So you can apply, and he'll be only able to allow that policy only, nothing more. So now he can work. If I want to transfer files, not a problem. But this is something also unique. I don't know if it's readable from back or anything, but it says, you do not have permission to download file. So think of how you work right now. If I create an SSL VPN, and I give permissions to Windows or anything, and we mount the disk, can you control if they can exfiltrate? So if you know the kill chain, exfiltration is one of the biggest number one, I forgot which number it is on there right now, but exfiltration is on the kill chain. We apply a policy that says you can upload, but you can download. Why would you do that for a contractor? Because he needs to upload code, and that code needs to be validated. He needs to fix something, because that's what he's hired to do. So he works, uploads whatever he needs to do, a new EDR or something, or a new code or whatever it is, but he can't steal any data. So we protect it, we record it, we apply the MFA. Three most important things when it comes to contractor logging in, and very easy to deploy. So here I can upload, I have some other things that I can do, take screenshots, which it's a desktop, so you can take screenshots with a phone if you want, or just use the native app. But this one takes a high quality one. I guess that's more important. Also, if you notice that's important is that little box, sorry, I have updates, I'm trying to get rid of that, but if you can see that right now, it says, set up offline MFA. Why is that important? That server, it also takes that MFA and says, if something happened, internet failed, and you need to go physically to the server, you're allowed to have access during that time. It doesn't need to be RDP SSH. What if you need to go physically and do something to that server, to the console? Then you should be able to have offline MFA. And that process is very simple. Sorry, I'm going to try to see if I can, there we go. User clicks on it, and it says, welcome, set up your MFA. Scan barcode, OTP, YubiKey. Basic offline configuration. We'll leave that session because I want to work on the Linux now. Now this one is more unique. I love Linux. I've worked on it, but I'm still learning. I wouldn't say that smart. Long time ago when OpenStack was cool, I did a lot of code review for the firewall keystone, but that's a long time ago. But what do you see on the three things over there? Still, you can launch with secret. You can put in the manual password, but also you can launch with my account. I'm already authenticated because Linux allows us to do single sign-on. One of my favorite things. So I'm going to show you two things why this is important. I already authenticated. Single sign-on is one of my favorite things. You authenticate once, and then you can use single sign-on applications through Microsoft Azure or wherever you have single sign-on. Same concepts apply here. I can go to my Rocky Linux, pulls it up, allows me to log in, but it didn't ask me for MFA. That's the idea of single sign-on. So if you are okay with that policy on your company level, not a problem. I already provided my MFA at the portal login. Why would I need to do it twice? So we're going to exit this one. And I'm going to relaunch it with manual credentials. Because let's say I have my friends or I have something, I'm just going to use manual credentials. And hopefully I didn't type that password in wrong, but if it's okay, it'll kick us out and I'll have to retype it. Now, as I mentioned, 1 gig RAM, not production ready, but takes a second. I didn't work right. And I have 2 YubiKeys, one that I travel with, another one, but it gives me an option. Available mechanisms, OTP, security questions, or my 2 YubiKeys. So if I go to my security question, because again, what's my car? Put it in, and I'm logged in. That is how we can apply the policies. That is how we can actually take that to the next level. Now, what's very unique about that, one second, is as I mentioned, we can take that policy even further. Oop, not this one. You see that on the middle, it says commands and command groups. Here, I have a few commands I put in. Restart Apache, system CMD, event viewer, firewall with advanced security from Microsoft, HTTPD for Unix, and print management. Believe it or not, my first job after college was print administrator. Nobody gets hired as print administrators anymore. We don't use printers, we don't use paper. But that was my first job. Now, if you ask me right now how to configure a print administrator for Microsoft, I would not probably remember anymore. But that was my first thing. That's why I put that out there as just a reminder. But here we can kind of put more commands. So there's some out of the box. But for example, in Linux, I can do system move, ls, id, no sudo root, touch, wget. And if you're creative, you can create your own command. Easy and simple. Custom paths, run as wheel, run as root, run as some admin or some permission that's local there. So what's the important thing? We do not change anything on that Linux. The only thing is, if you're a Linux guy or Unix, we basically augment the PAM-D module inside of the Unix, that it works and injects MFA, it works with kerbals, and it works based off of that agent. And that's what allows us to do so many advanced features in that. Now, once we build, let's say, some commands, we can also do windows. Here I have just a few that I created, ODBC, PowerShell, some different things. What does this mean? It means that if I build out these commands, and same thing, custom commands, but if I build these out, then I build groups. Because engineers, when they developed this, they said it would be crazy to take every individual command in Unix and say, I want to put sudo for these users, and now you have like 200 commands that they can run. So it's easier to build them on once, put them in a group, assign it to what I have, firewall team, junior admin team, or print admin. Once I have these commands, go back to my policies, and now I can do granular privilege elevation. Very simply, I put this in. Same policy. The only difference is I assign which admin permissions they can do. That is how simple and easy it is to then limit the administrators in your company. Why is this important? We are not even once providing them admin access, admin users. It works on a patent technology from a company called Centrify when they merged with Tycotic to form Delinea. It's called GSS API. And what that basically means is, in a fancy way, it's a token. The application to the agent generates a token from the AD. Everything's stored in AD. And there's no passwords. We can elevate that single kind of almost like in a jail if you're Unix or container, that application. It elevates the permissions without ever exposing the entire underlying system. So from that, it allows us to put all these commands and everything in there. I have 2 minutes, so I want to make sure I have some questions. If there's some questions from the audience, that kind of leaves it. I'm going to put it back to the slide just a little bit before that, and I'll take questions if there's any. If not, I think we can end. Any questions? Also, oh, there's one. Yes.
Okay, just want to, okay, it's working.
Thank you.